Everyone loves summer travel. With Americans specifically, 27% say that they would rather give up coffee for life than give up traveling, according to a Priceline survey. As the outlook for inflation remains uncertain, many are choosing a new trend called townsizing. Joining us now to explain this phenomenon and much more, we've got Brett Keller, the CEO of Priceline. Brett, good to have you on the program here with us, and thanks for taking some time with Yahoo Finance. Let's just talk about that term townsizing, because honestly, this is the first time I've heard of this. What exactly are you seeing in the data over at Priceline?
Yeah, this is actually it's a term our research team here coined when they noticed some trends really popping here over the last year. Consumers continue to look for new experiences and new ways to travel. And not surprising here in the U.S. with big markets and big cities really drawing a lot of attention for events and other activities this year, a number of consumers are looking for quieter destinations. And so they're looking to have a real hometown experience, since they're looking for smaller markets across the U.S. to travel to and spend their money and find a little more relaxation and just chill out. And so there's some interesting markets that we're seeing some real movements in, towns like Cape May, New Jersey, Portland, Maine, Lake George, New York, Newport, Rhode Island. A lot of these markets very close to the beach, and really, though, just a quieter, simpler vacation experience.
And so how is that changing some of the travel and accommodations means that you're seeing consumers and vacationers tap into?
Sure. Well, we are obviously seeing more pressure moving into these smaller markets, and they're very exciting for people to try and find new places that aren't completely tapped out. But the reality is the big markets are still the big markets. So we're seeing a lot of travel into the biggest entertainment meccas in the U.S., places like Orlando, places like New York. And the West Coast has been very hot coming into the summer, everything from Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, San Diego. And so we're seeing the big markets continue to rise, but also these smaller markets taking a lot of the pressure off some of those markets.
What are you seeing in the propensity of consumers who are still making sure that they are vacationing over the course of this summer relative to previous years?
Yeah, people prioritize their summer vacations. We see that year after year after year, even coming out of COVID when travel restrictions were in place, people still wanted to find a way to get out. And so what happens is their patterns change. We saw over the last couple of years a lot of interest in longer vacations overseas. So people were heading to Asia and to Europe. And that trend continues into 2025. We see a lot of interest in big markets like Rome, Paris, and London. In Asia, of course, Japan has been the really hot market for the last year. So Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, those markets drawing a lot of attention with surges up significantly year over year. Now, people are also looking for ways to have big experiences and not spend quite as much. Those markets are very expensive at times. And so they're looking for other markets. For example, in Asia, Manila, Seoul, not necessarily drawing the kind of attention that Tokyo draws, but are beginning to really pop on our meter here. And in the European side of things, Eastern Europe with Prague and Istanbul and Berlin, you can find some really nice properties there, 5-star hotels for under $200 a night. In fact, some close to $100 a night. At that kind of value, consumers are being attracted to some of these other markets.
You mentioned some of those international destinations, and I wonder, especially compared to some of what we've heard from other travel CEOs in the airline space, as well as from other accommodation CEOs, what you're seeing on the international travel inbound into the U.S. right now, knowing that that's taking a bit of a sentiment hit just with some of the geopolitical tensions plus the immigration policies that we're seeing rolled out as well.
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of a softening there across the board. If you look, you read the news, you read all of the industry reports, and they're all saying essentially the same thing, right? Travel from Canada down meaningfully from where it was a year ago as a result of many of the tariff policies and communication around that. But what we're seeing is that Canadians are finding other places to travel. And so rather than coming down into the U.S., they'll travel down to Mexico or other markets. The reality is people still want to travel, and they'll find alternatives if something isn't necessarily at the top of their list. Now, when we talk about inbound coming in from Europe, that's still a strong market for the U.S., but we have seen a slight reduction in traffic coming in from Europe as well. So those things tend to have bumps and valleys, but over time those even out and essentially, consumers find a way to get to where they want to go.
Okay, so we got to get it straight from the CEO. What are your top tips for booking? Am I still traveling on Tuesdays and Saturdays?
The nice thing about this summer, I think, is that the availability is good, right? There is an opportunity to really find great deals in travel. And if you have just a little bit of flexibility, you don't need a lot. Shifting a day or two can really alter the price of a ticket by, a couple $100. And for most consumers, that's a lot of money. And so my suggestion would be open with a couple of destinations, do a little bit of shopping and price comparison, and then pull the trigger because it's likely that you'll be able to really save some money on a flight. In fact, flight prices going into the summer look really good, especially for overseas flights. It was so hot last year, a lot of new inventory was opened up. And this year, with things quieting down just a little bit, there's some really great deals to fly to these markets and to then, of course, book a hotel that meets your budget. So I think just, again, a little bit of flexibility. Look at some of the discounted offerings out there, Priceline in particular. We've got some products that are specifically built to help you really find great value with our Express Deals product, for example. And a little flex will save you a lot of money this summer.
Perhaps a little bit of that post-Olympic year cool down that we might be seeing as well. Brett, thanks so much for breaking down some of the trends that you're seeing and some of the tips for those of us who might have the tabs opened up for that next vacation. Thank you.